very slowly. I'm sorry, my Facebook is quite slow today. It's just taking a minute.
It says it's live.
Yeah.
Okay. So wonderful. So we are live now, and I'm kicking off. Hello, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning. Namaste. This is Vimal Mahendru from New Delhi. It's indeed a pleasure and a privilege to host this live networking session. First of all, I trust you're all safe and well. COVID-19 has taught us many things, and some of us have picked up cooking skills. I learned a few dishes which I never thought that I would. And it's been a wonderful journey for me also to try and rediscover myself and also re-engage with the way things are happening. And one of the things that I have realized in all my work, that I'm a very social person. I love to meet, shake hands, and meet people. And that's one thing that I have been missing. So this event today is kind of a way to bring together what we have been missing also. So maybe in some ways you are all, those who are on Facebook Live or Zoom and all our panelists today, we are part of this living experiment in a way to try and see how can we engage better with each other, even when socially we are distanced. So thank you so much for joining in and being part of this experience and this journey. So let me kick off this journey by a simple warm-up questions, innocuous questions. And the first one, the way I'm in New Delhi, if you could put in your Facebook chat or Zoom chat, the city and country from where you are logging in. I'm in New Delhi, India. It's sunset time and I'm looking at a lot of orange outside of my window. I see that UK, Bristol. Sylvia, any messages coming in on Facebook Live?
Not just yet.
Okay. Leiden, Netherlands, Cambridge, UK. Wonderful. I know that Gabriella and is my colleague from the IEC Central Office. I guess you must be in Geneva right now.
I am, exactly.
Wonderful.
And it looks like Solange is in Geneva too.
I'm disguised. I'm talking in Geneva from Eindhoven.
Oh, that's nice. Okay. That's a neat trick, that.
And from Nairobi, and I see Carlos logging in from Mexico. Wonderful, welcome. And James,
hello everybody.
You're in Sydney. Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Mm-hmm. Okay, so while we're waiting for more messages to come in, the second question is just a very general one. What is your immediate surroundings? Where are you right now? Is it your attic, your bedroom, home office, work office, commuting? Just put in a message. Where are you logging in from? I am, for example, in the guest room. I was banished from, but I was earlier working out of my daughter's bedroom, but she's visiting these days, so I'm out of there into the guest room. So just put in, I see home office, office from home, wonderful bedroom of my son. That's interesting. And
right now I am in my office. I have a small office in my home. I prepare an office because the pandemic is necessary to have a special place to work, to talk with the people, to have a conference.
Fantastic. Cohen, you're the lucky guy. You have a spare room at home.
Yeah, it's just that's the smallest room in the house, which is not the toilet. Well, it's as much as I can make of it, but it works. It works. You just need a table, right, and put your laptop down, and just sit there and work.
Fantastic.
I guess I've done the I've transformed the room of my son in my office, more or less now. With pandemic, it's coming very nice that he's not now using it, so it's very convenient.
Lovely, lovely. And I see that, Sylvia, you're from Facebook, Augusto Quitco. Oh, that's interesting. And also we have some guests joining in from Philippines. That's very interesting, you know, the length and breadth of the country. I see that also Vladimir has joined, and it seems that he's muted. Vladimir, please switch on your camera and you may unmute yourself. Okay, let's get some more questions going. The third question to all of you who are on Facebook Live and also to all the panelists. When I say SDGs, what immediately comes to your mind? That one word that captures what comes to your mind. Enigma, enthusiastic, enabler, confused, confusing, confusion, anything that comes to your mind.
Humanity.
Humanity, that's a lovely word. For me, the one word when I was thinking of this question that immediately came up was equality. I think we've somewhere, while the world has developed tremendously over the last 100 years, but the development somewhere has been a bit skewed. And while there is a lot of effort to bridge the gap between haves and have-nots, somewhere I get a sense personally deep down that we're doing a bad job of bridging that gap. And maybe this is one way that we could, as a global community, try and do that. I see some lovely words coming in here. I see someone from Quebec, Canada has also joined. Thank you very much. Urgency, decency, that's a lovely word. Inspiring people, priority, awe, at the necessary scale and speed of change to achieve sustainability. Responsibility, a lovely word coming in from Augusto. Someone who's joined in from Napoli also, and looking at this whole thing. Before I go forward, you know, first of all, I want to thank all of you on the panel for volunteering to be part of this session. And do excuse me for calling it an experiment also. I know that you are at the top of whatever you're doing, but it's an experiment in the social engagement. So let me ask each of you to give a quick introduction to yourself, also by name, what you're doing, where are you located, and also something about your work and how or why SDGs are important to you. What is your link and why did you raise your hand to be part of this session? I can start by myself first. I'm Vimal Mahendru. I'm born in India, brought up here, come from fairly humble background. And when I was growing up, I did see electricity at home, but there was only one light bulb per room. And from there, my journey took me to be an entrepreneur, you know, producing electrical equipment. But come 2014, I was called upon by the government in India to reflect upon the idea that even at that time, we had more than 1 billion people in India, worldwide, who were not having electricity at all. In India alone, there were more than 300 million people without electricity. And I remember at that time going in 2014 to IEC Central Office for a meeting and raising this concern that, hey, we need to do something about electricity access. That's when I became conscious about SDGs and electricity access. May I invite, maybe based on the screen I see, Chris, if you could give a quick introduction.
Hi, yes, I'm Chris Moller, research visitor at the Open University in the UK. I travel to West Africa quite a lot, and I see people there have really very difficult lives. And I feel a sense of embarrassment that my life is so comfortable and I'm so fortunate, and these people are struggling. And to me, it is absolutely no wonder that there's an enormous pressure to migrate to Europe and the USA from people whose lives are so difficult. And it seems to me that we have to find a way to reduce inequality and share things in a better way. So that's really why I'm so very concerned to be involved with the Sustainable Development Goals.
Fantastic. Solange.
Hello, so my name is Solange Blaskowski. I'm talking to you from Eindhoven in the Netherlands. I work for a healthy and well-being electronics company in the Netherlands. And I think the first time I was really aware of the link with SDGs was a number of years ago, 10, 12 years ago. One of my sons came to me and asked whether this year we would go on holidays. And I said, yes, just like last year, we will go on summer to this summer to holidays. But no, last year we didn't go on holidays, was his answer. Then I reminded him that, well, do you remember we went with the car all the way to south of France? There's a typical place for a Dutch holiday. It's very typical. And we sung all many songs, the 8 hours drive we had. And so, yeah, but Mama, to go on holidays, you need to go with an airplane. If you don't go with the airplane, then it's not a holiday. And I checked this with my colleagues at school and they all confirmed it. So for these times, I got the first kind of wake up call. My God, where are we going? Consumerism. We are really consuming a lot. And that's where we got into the link with the SDGs. And we need to do something about that. So it's for me, it was an important personal call, what to do about this, yes.
Lovely. Very interesting. James.
Yeah, g'day, it's James Sanko here from Sydney. Thanks for having me. So mine's fairly recent. I've spent 20 years working in education and research, where I was responsible for helping to extend high-speed connectivity to the universities and to research. And in the last few years, I've been more involved in smart cities, which is where IEC and ISO standards are based around. And my desire there was to look at ways to be more sustainable in the way in which we use resources in cities, and use smart technology at the same time to keep, I guess, livability, and to also, have prosperity, but also have environmental security as well. And as a result of being involved in those activities, I came across the SDGs, and that was just a real eye-opener for me. So I've been just learning for the last 3 to 4 months, been learning more and more about what the SDGs are about. So I'm a relative newbie, but yeah, certainly here to give my thoughts.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for joining. In fact, I'm looking forward to some good, sharp questions from you, at least, which shake us all. Before I come to you, Cohen, I see a message coming in from Vladimir that he's having some challenges in connecting. So hey, no worries, Vladimir. We look forward to your joining as and when your net begins to accept. Thank you. Koen, over to you, please.
Yes, thank you. So hello, everybody. My name is Koen van Gulik. I'm also from the Netherlands, actually, but I live in Leiden. So we could actually perhaps throw a stone to Eindhoven and maybe hit each other. Not so far apart. So I'm a safety researcher. I have been for the last 20 years. I work as a researcher at TNO. I'm a visiting professor in Huddersfield in the UK, lived there for 5 years. That was on railway safety, and did some safety research before that as well. And I guess my relation to the SDGs also being, I guess, a relatively newbie, and Vimal really got me drawn into this discussion, and I'm, following that more and more active as I go along. But my motivation for working in the safety domain has always been to try and prevent human suffering. And I guess it's from a relatively narrow perspective where we're looking at mostly preventing accidents or explosions or people sticking their hands where they shouldn't. But in a small way, I guess I can contribute to that interest of trying to reduce suffering, either through health and well-being or through getting industry processes safer. So so from that perspective, I guess my interest is relatively narrow from my drive, but it is really coming from my primary drive to just reduce suffering in a way that I can actually contribute in, I guess, my way. In terms of a personal revelation, I don't really have a personal revelation saying, okay, this is why SDG is important to me, but we did lose some family members quite early on in their lifespan. So that did make me think quite early about, how can I make the world just a little bit nicer than it is today. And it happens to be the best way I can do this. So that's where I'm drawn into this SDG story. I do like the way that it's not just a local issue, right? So I mean, accidents you've got everywhere, don't you? But it's not like a local thing. And I think the SDGs very clearly make this a global problem rather than just a local accident here or a problem there. It makes it a very important thing worldwide, which is basically why I joined it with IEC projects and any global effort on this safety domain. I'm joining in as much as I can. So that's really what my motivation is.
That's a wonderful personal journey that you have shared. Carlos.
Hello, everybody. Carlos Perez from Mexico. During the last 25 years, I have been involved in the regulation, in the creation of standards in Mexico. I manage a standardization body in Mexico. And one of the things I have been thinking during these months is that the humanity is changing. The pandemic is giving us some lessons, right? And we need to understand more the nature. And with the standards we are creating, sometimes we are promoting how to reduce the consumption of electricity, for example, how to use the plastic, and trying to reduce the consumption of the natural resources. I think the people do not understand the goals of the SDGs, but we need to try to promote with our families, for example, these kind of things. I talk with my sons, with my daughters about the importance of the energy efficiency, for example. And we change the lamps in the house, trying to reduce the consumption of electricity. And now they are really interested in understand why we need to save the water, why we need to save the light. All these kind of things are really, really important for me because it's the work that we are creating for them, for our children, for our family in the near future. I'm really happy to participate here, and thank you, Vilma.
Thank you very much. And it's an interesting thing you said that SDGs are not something for which just policymakers and others have to do. Even at family, at personal level, we can do. So thank you for sharing that. Lorenza, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. We're going through a round of introduction. So if you could introduce yourself and also your connection with SDGs and what inspired you to be here with us today.
Sure. So my name is Lorenza, and I am from Italy, and was for, I would say 12 years, the leader of a program of the United Nations on standardization. And in the last 5 years on that job, I was very much promoting the link between standards and the SDGs. And this project was very dear to my heart. It was called, and it is still called, as it is continuing to be kept alive and indeed thriving by colleagues. And the project is Standards for the SDGs. So it is a project that aims at showing why standards are vital to realize the SDGs, why we can't reach the SDGs without standards. And recently I have moved to Belgrade, still working for the United Nations, but now at the national level. And the SDGs keep being very important to me, as my everyday job now has shifted from the standards world into the national world, and to bring the SDGs to Serbia, and to join the other partners here with our efforts to support all the stakeholders in the country to reach the SDGs. And of course, one of my first visits was to the Standards Office, as I consider them as a very important partner in this endeavor, and continuing with these efforts to realize the SDGs through standards. So I'll stop here, and I'm very pleased to meet you all, and sorry for the connection issues that kept me a bit
No
late.
worries. Delighted that you are here with us. Anne.
Hi, everyone. Thank you again for joining. So I talk a lot like Vimal, so I'm going to try and reduce the amount of stuff that I say. So my connection to the SDGs, all the way from, I did grow up without electricity, but I like my story with the SDGs is not as much centered on that as it is centered around the question I used to ask myself while I was in school, which is, why aren't there solar panels on every single roof in Nairobi? Because Nairobi has a lot of buildings. And I used to wonder, because we do have a lot of blackouts every now and then. And I guess it's concerning that whenever I have to buy, for example, a fridge on my end, I have to think about, how reliable my electricity will be. So if I want to buy a freezer and store maybe fish that I've bought to stay for like 3 weeks or something like that, even at the point I am at, I still have to ask myself the question, so what happens when electricity is not available? So if I buy a huge amount of meat, let's say I spend $50, which is a lot of meat here, to buy meat, there's a risk that the next day I might not have electricity. And besides the fact that there's a lot of off-grid areas in Kenya that are supposed to be electrified, there's a lot of work that's supposed to be done with regards to appliances. And I just would like to tell Cohen that safety is very crucial. Standards and SDGs have a lot of intersection, because that's where I work, right in the middle of SDG 7 and standardization. So my work on SDGs, I work daily on SDG 7 and its intersection with healthcare, its intersection with education. So yes, I guess my daily life powers my work with SDGs. Yeah.
Lovely. And that's an interesting paradigm you shared, that you can afford a refrigerator, you can buy a refrigerator, but what do you do about electricity? And you want to store meat or fish or whatever, but if there's no electricity, what's the point?
Yes.
So if you were really serious about buying a refrigerator, possibly thinking of a big UPS, which makes the cost of refrigeration go up 5 times.
Yeah.
If you were to do that. Interesting paradigm over there. Gabriela and Sylvia, a quick introduction from you also, please. You've done a lot on SDGs. Gabriela?
Thank you. Well, it's interesting because in 2015, when the SDGs were launched, I mean, I heard about the millennial goals and all that, but it was sort of the first time that we were much more directly concerned, impacted. And the first thing, my reaction was, I'm very enthusiastic about what we do at the IEC. So I was wondering, how is the IEC contributing to this? And what I found is that while we don't really have a link to SDGs in any of the standards, we actually do contribute. And it's not just SDG 7, but because electricity is something today that's important in every different area of life, in a way, we impact all of the SDGs in one way or the other. And so, I mean, we two have been cooperating quite intensely, and your enthusiasm, Vimal, is really, you know, infecting. So I think stories that I heard of people who haven't had electricity or how it changed their life is something where, when you are living in a country where electricity is always available, you just don't think of it, and it makes a completely different impact on you. Yeah, so that's one, and I want to help people to better understand how we contribute, how we can help them, and especially maybe people in the governments who need to know that there is no miracle. You have tools that can help you connect.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's very well put. And I think that's a good thing. I see this change coming across the entire standardization community, not only in IEC, but I know that in other SDGs like ISO and ITU, everyone is getting serious about it. Sylvia, any thoughts on SDGs coming from you? A quick introduction, please.
Hi, thank you for having me. I was thinking as everybody was talking, and actually something that Anne said really reminded me about my personal experiences of just generally, you know, access to just thinking about SDGs. And I think I come from Eastern Europe originally, from Poland. I studied in Hungary, and I've experienced different levels of lack of access to electricity. And then moved to the UK, where actually I expected to have constant access to electricity, but I lived in a house with a meter that I had to top up. So if I forgot to top up my meter, I would run out of electricity. And I was really surprised on how many levels. We had this conversation yesterday at our event, how smart meters are fantastic, but many people, even in the UK, still just have a little key that they have to go to the shop and top up. And, you know, if you put £10, it's great for a day, but is it going to last you at 11 in the evening? So I think we tend to take it for granted. So that's one. That's my personal experience. I am an activist blogger, and I feel I put, when you asked about a word, I put two words: inspiring people, because I feel there's so much fantastic work done around the world, and thanks to technology, how we experience it today, social media, you know, we tend to navigate towards negative conversations, but actually I'm so inspired about all the little initiatives, all the big initiatives happening all across the world, and people connecting so easily to really share experiences. So for me, it's mostly about inspiring people. So what I do at IEC is translating the stories of what wonderful people do with standards into more kind of general language to make it relatable to people who are watching us, just so they understand the vast amount of work done by the IEC to make everything more sustainable. And even though personally I feel strongly about well-being, I work in digital well-being, so, you know, mental health and the situation of people who might be marginalized, I think we all have a lot of work to do, and we're already all doing a lot of fantastic work. So I look forward to learning from all of you today.
Thank you very much. But you're helping me out with this whole webinar, and you're going on to Facebook Live, etc. So really appreciate all your time and effort in this one. I also know that we have another panelist who was to join from Ireland, Geraldine. For some reason, she's not able to connect here. So Sylvia, if you could just send her a message or some way to reach out to her, if you could connect on Zoom so that we get her here itself. So my question, the next one is, we all know that SDGs are important, and so are standards for implementing SDGs. Lorenza, your work is clearly in that direction to make that connect and making sure that the standardization community understands. You and I have met earlier, and we've talked about this, and we worked a lot together on this. So one question, and this is just an open question. If I were to ask each one of you, what expectation do you have from IEC? It's agreed that standards are important and SDGs, but what more do you think, if I was to ask you, can IEC do about it? Anyone? I would love IEC to, for example, talk more about it. You know, let the world know what we are doing. I think we are too humble, polite, understated. Sorry, Gabrielle and Sylvia. I think we need to talk about it. Take our message to the global community, not just to the industry and experts, but to everybody else. I see, Chris, you wanted to share something.
Yes, sure. One of the things which really interests me is the tension between innovation and sustainability. Sustainability is such an easy word to say, isn't it? But you know, I have grandchildren, and on the balance of probability, my grandchildren are going to see in the 22nd century. And you think, my goodness, what kind of world are they going to find in the 22nd century? And so much has to change in order for their world to be better than ours. So we have a lot to do. Innovation is one of those words that in Cambridge opens all doors. Innovation is good. But innovation has a problem in that for many people in the developing world, it means short product lifetimes, inscrutable products, built-in obsolescence. They don't want innovation, they want stability. And actually sustainability is about stability, isn't it? The trouble is that in order to get to stability, we have to innovate. And there's obviously a paradox there. Okay, so we have to find a way to sort this out, and it's really difficult, really challenging. One of the issues I'm very conscious of is that in the UK, we use twice as much resources than we generate ourselves. We import half of what we consume from the rest of the world, and it's pretty obvious that everybody can't do that. So how do we innovate to reduce the amount we consume so that everybody can have the same standard of living that we have? And this is a huge challenge, and we have to put our minds to it. Unfortunately, our financial systems that we have in place push us in exactly the opposite direction.
Sure. So anyone else? Want to share some thoughts? Yes, Anne. Anne and Cohen.
Okay. So I think for me, it's I was actually about to walk into Cohen's space a bit, because I do a bit of work on system safety. But I think my concern with the current outlook of, for example, how we look at products and systems that are installed in African countries which are trying to electrify and reach more people, has been, whenever you're in a standards meeting and you mention that there needs to be an extra safety tweak that needs to be made, you hear there's always this talk about cost. So there's always that thing that will come up. Oh, if we do this, we'll increase the cost. If we do this, we'll increase the cost. And I think at one point in the research that I've been doing, when you talk to people in rural areas, so think of it, it's a chicken and egg situation. So the people who are buying these appliances would actually even take a loan to buy an appliance if they knew it would last a long time. But right now, the way the situation is they do not know, which means that they buy the cheaper ones. So it ends up like feeding into itself. So there's a larger market for cheaper products, which increases, which increases the market for people who are bringing in not very good quality goods, which makes it even harder for people in rural areas, especially in Africa, to actually know what exactly to buy. So it's this strange cycle, which, to break it, something has to give. Either people put out good quality products and then do a lot of outreach to actually explain to people how to identify good quality products, which is what some of the standards bodies are trying to do. And I think I don't know what that looks like. I'm happy to actually think through what that looks like, and that's, I think, part of what I'm doing right now as my work. But it's crucial that the IEC takes communication to people who are not very literate very seriously. So the link, when we're developing standards, let's not stop at, oh, just label the product. And then someone, wait, you're labeling it with voltage, wattage, and all these things, but do those people actually understand? So communication to the end users is something I would like to see more of through the IEC. Yeah.
Cohen?
Oh, that's a very good question, and I can't just answer that from the top of my head. but I do agree with you that the standards. So IEC standards, I guess, in a slightly different light than IEC members would. To me, that the codification of knowledge that we all agree on is mostly correct. Having a scientific background, there's this pipe. For me, it's a pipeline. So you start from academics that talk a lot, right? And it takes a very long time for them actually to agree on something. By the time they start agreeing, it becomes worthwhile codifying, and that's where the standards come in. And in the end, you have your laws, national laws, and you go to further levels of codification. But it's on that spot where the codification takes place within IEC, where experts from different people come together, say, this is something we know is going to work, this is something we're not sure about. It's really there where this discussion takes place. And the point you're making is really at that point when those decisions are made are the most relevant. I couldn't give you an answer of how to make sure you get those voices heard in the standardization process, but it's definitely the first place to call, I think, especially where also mostly you're trying to, you're trying to engage with industry, right? They're going to have to make this stuff, and if you can't somehow convince them, please do take into account these things that are maybe not directly or immediately making you lots of money, but would be a very good idea from a more from different perspectives. I think that would definitely be the place for it. So that's why to me IEC has such an important role to play there. And I do agree with you that communication with under or groups of people that are not well represented, reaching out to them, I think would be very good in that perspective.
Before I come to you, Solange, just a quick message. I just realized that we've already taken 37 minutes of an hour. I wish the session was 4 hours. So I will welcome brief answers because I see lots of questions coming in from Facebook, and I have a longer list which came to me from the registered delegates also. So I have my homework here, which we all want to do. So Solange, over to you.
Okay, thank you. So I just want to jump in the things that Chris and Anna has said, and a little bit on what Koen has said. Actually, an answer for that consumerism we have, I was referring to that later, is how to use the resources we have, our natural resources, in a better way. Is in fact something that's called circular economy. And we are very much engaged to that. So part of my job is developing standards on circular economy. And it's exactly looking at how to make products to live longer. But if you make a product to live longer, is there a consumer? Are the consumers ready for that? Are they willing to use the product longer? So it's a whole process. It's not only the products, but it's also changing the mindset of the consumers, changing the way, for example, if I want to refurbish a product, I can have a beautiful product that is perfectly refurbishable, but I also need to be able to get back that product from the markets. And we know that some countries, they don't allow it. Yeah. So also the international contacts, the international collaboration needs to be there. The markets need to be open to allow for that process. So, and it everything, all the dots are connected. Then we would be able to go into a situation where we would maintain the resources in use instead throwing them away and making them a waste. And I think that's the answer to our issues in the resources. We need to maintain them in the market, in use. So thank you.
Thank you. I see that there are a lot of comments coming in from Facebook also. Pierre, for example, is saying that IEC should provide tools to be sure standards are fulfilled. So conformity assessment is as important, if not more, than just making a standard. I think very interesting thought. James, also, I see that you've given a link also over here of some recent approach on circular economy in New South Wales. You want to talk about that?
Just briefly, yes, Vimal, just following on there from what Solange was saying, the New South Wales government here in Australia has just released a paper on the opportunity to move from transition to a circular economy. So I've put the link in there. Maybe that can be shared on Facebook as well for those that might be interested. I think COVID-19 is really sort of giving us the opportunity to get off the treadmill that we've been on for many, many years and actually stop and look up and think about what we're doing and why we're doing it.
Interesting you call it the treadmill. I see some comments here, exactly echoing that. There is a comment which says, again, to the point that Anne also made and the treadmill that you're talking about, people will invest into things that will last, but they will not invest in things which will not last. So cheaper products will go because there's no incentive to go toward a better product. Let's say in economies where financial resources are constrained. I see Geraldine also.
Vimal, allow me just one small comment. To certain products, people will invest, but for example, a mobile phone. Some people don't care if it's still working. They want to have the new and the most beautiful, the most powerful. And even if it's 1 year old, who they care? If there is a new one, they will buy it. And I think the consumer needs to change the mindset as well. And of course, a washing machine, everybody will want one that will last forever. But it really depends on the product.
Exactly. And somewhere I think psychologically we need to get away from this very unbridled consumerism which is promoted by these very flashy ads. I don't want to take names of some brands, but I see these full page advertisements for these latest mobile phones, the gizmos, they just make it look so sexy for everyone to splurge on. I think we need to find that balance.
Vimal, I wanted to say something also to link to what Chris said, and Anne, I think what's really interesting, if you look out there, I had a discussion with a PV company in Africa, which has sort of like a mobile phone approach whereby you get an installation and you pay monthly. And they said to me that the worst thing for their business is NGOs bringing in free solar panels that have not been quality tested. And he said, she said to me that the worst thing is that people are open to innovation, but then it doesn't pan out. If they get something free, we're only adding to the waste, and they're mistrusting innovation later. And that's one of the things why, for example, the solar lamp, the program that one of our TCs did together with the World Bank was such a success, because it was a way of quality ensuring the product, because these people are giving a hell of a lot of their income to a new technology. And what a pity if it then isn't taken up and kept.
Yeah. Okay. Can I make a comment?
Sure.
Okay.
I see that there are only 15 minutes. I have my homework, which is also your homework. And I know that there are more questions coming in from Facebook. And for all the questions that we cannot answer live now, I assure you I'll go back to the Facebook Live page and I'll look up all the questions and we'll try and address those the questions over there also. So bear with me while I know last point from Lorenza, Anne, and Carlos. Lorenza.
Yes, thank you. And I think what IEC has done very well has been to work in systems. So IEC has really been the ideator of this idea that standards work in systems, like the systems of cities, the system of the home, and how all the standards connect around something that has a purpose for the final user. Because many of the IEC standards are absolutely vital, and we couldn't live our lives without them. We're not aware that they exist because they work so well. And by moving into this systems approach, IEC has been able to communicate that more effectively, that value more effectively to the final user, and especially when you look cities, then you have a proposition that you can make to cities managers and mayors, and that's so important. And the reason why this is so important is that the transformation that realizing the SDGs require is not about tinkering at the edges. It's not about fixing a little light here or a little, wind there. It is about transforming our economies according, of course, to the circular economy model, but among other interventions which are also important. And that transformation really is an essentially systemic work. And that can only be done with system thinking. So I think we should really continue with good work.
Thank you. Thank you for that endorsement. Anne.
Yep. So I wanted to mention something about the conversation regarding consumerism, because I do think that sometimes it's crucial that we contextualize African situations. So for example, in a lot of places, people just got electricity, which means we have a chance to actually inculcate the circular economy in a lot of places where electrification is being done right now, because these are not people in especially rural sub-Saharan Africa communities have not yet gotten used to the idea of buying and discarding. For them, an appliance is an investment, right? If I'm going to take $200 of my money, and that's a lot of money for rural communities, borrow it from friends or borrow it from a cooperative that I'm part of, that appliance better live. And I think it's very crucial to understand that, given also the different standards of living and the different things, that we are at different levels in terms of consumerism, and that impacts, and that's something that we can tap into to just ensure that for these specific regions and these specific communities, there is no need for them to get into the same rat race that we are in right now. They start off at the best place. Yeah.
Good point. Carlos, and then Chris.
Yes. Only I want to comment that all the sustainable development goals are important, but the question was what the IEC can do in addition to promote these efforts. And I think the standards is an important part. Is the social responsibility that the IEC have, generating better standards. And additionally, I think the IEC need to promote the responsible production, not only the creation of the standards. We need to focus in some kind of actions, activities that in our community that promote the responsible production, including the quality of products, considering the comments from Chris and from Solange regarding the circular economy and the innovation. I think this is really important to be focused not in the 17 sustainable development goals, only in 2 or 3 that the IEC have more qualification and are more focused in the influence. Exactly.
Very good point.
Yeah, absolutely, Carlos. Yes, that plays into exactly what I was going to say. One thing that the IEC can do is publish documents that governments can then make mandatory. And it would be great if somebody from the IEC on this call could just mention a few of the standards that the IEC has been working on and has published relating to the circular economy and responsible design.
Mm-hmm. That's a very good point. I think normally IEC does not push for regulations because IEC is a voluntary body. It's not IEC's, let's say, mandate to push for certain regulations, but it's a very interesting and very powerful thought.
But can you make everybody on the call aware of what those documents are in case governments might feel motivated to use them?
Perhaps what I can do is perhaps I can add to the chat, but we have, for example, environmental conscious design standard that helps organizations to design products that have that are taking into account the environment from all the life phase. We have also some material efficiency standards. We have some of the product standards. They are already, for example, the healthcare medical systems and imaging systems. They have already developed standards around refurbishing. And they are the first ones. And I hope more of these TCs will develop this type. I can provide the numbers of these standards, but also how to reuse components and assess how to embed them in products and to assess reliability, and most importantly, safety. That's the most difficult part, how to assess safety of a reused component. So yes, all those things we are working. We are still missing a lot, but there is a lot there already.
Great, thank you.
Absolutely. In fact, just a quick point, for those who are interested, I know that Solange is hosting another session on exactly this topic of circular economy and waste management, SDG 12. Later on, I'll request Sylvia to just post the link here. Oh, I see that you just preempted me. There is the link to the session that Solange is going to be hosting. Please join that one. That is also going to be a very interesting one. I see that we are now in the last 9 minutes, and I know there is a lot more to share. I think partly it is my fault that this session was just 1 hour, and next time be sure it'll be 4 hours with a coffee break in the middle. For now, can I request, of course, there's SDGs is a big journey. This is the decade of action where we are trying to really implement all the SDGs. Can we share what we have already achieved, some stories from there, and some uplifting messages so that everyone on Facebook Live and all the audience for posterity know the impact good work on standardization and on SDGs makes a difference. And I can bring one story which really touched me. It's from India. I don't know if many of you who've been to India, you must have seen we have those push carts where, low-income sellers, they put some wares on top and they push a cart. In Bangalore, which is a city in southern India, there was this lady who had this push cart, and she would roast corn on the cob in a pot which had some coals, and she would roast them, and to roast them she had a handheld fan, and she was about 75 years of age, and she could do about maybe 1 corn in every 5 minutes. Last year, one NGO got her on her push cart a small solar PV panel, a very small charge controller and a battery, and a very small, I think it was 6-inch diameter fan, which was on that, so that the fan was automatically doing it. So she got a bigger pan in which she was roasting the corn. So instead of 1, she was able to do 3 corn at the same time. This is a very famous story coming out of Bangalore, so maybe you can find it on internet also. What it has done is it has changed her life. At 75 years of age, look at the comfort she has. I think this device also has some USB sockets, so her clients can charge their mobile phones while they're waiting there. She's able to engage them in conversations. Her sales have quadrupled. Why? Just because there was a $150 investment by one NGO on one push cart. How many carts are there worldwide? Millions. All these devices, there is an IEC standard, the solar PV panel, the battery, the charge controller, the fan, there's a small LED light also over there after dark. I think these are the kind of things we need to standardize. Any other stories that you want to share before we close? Happy stories which give us all a flavor of what can be achieved.
Oh,
yes, please, Lorenza.
Yeah, the story I'd like to share is the story of how we can make standards work better for women, which is one of the SDGs, SDG 5.
Absolutely.
And IEC has joined forces with other international organizations as well as national organizations and regional organizations all over the world that have committed to make standards work more for women, because in many different areas, women are not participating enough in the making of these standards. And just recently, there was an interesting study that was published by Canada, and it showed that when a country starts implementing standards, standards come to curb death for men on the workshops, for example, and on the working places, and that doesn't happen for women. And that's a very strong statistic, and it tells you that we need to make sure the standards work for everyone, and that we have still work to do, and we've started to do some great work with all these partners, and you can also check this initiative out. I'll provide a link.
Absolutely. I know on SDG 5, Lorenza, you've led this work and IEC has contributed to that. Any other stories anyone wants to share?
Yeah. So I think for me, it's been, because my work, like I said, is at the intersection between energy access and standardization. So last year, a certain friend of mine and I decided to tour rural Kenya and just see what people think. So we were doing a study on household perceptions of quality, and in one of the markets, we had this group of women that we met, and the most interesting thing was starting to explain to people how they can, so we had two lamps, one fake one and the other one, so one counterfeit and one real one, and showing people those two lamps. You could see that the moment they started, they were able to notice that, oh, this is the counterfeit one. It really changed, because someone was like, wait, I would have gone to the market and bought this other one, and actually gotten very angry that someone sold me something, poor quality. But now I know. And I think for me, that perspective, just realizing that it's not that people don't want to buy good quality products, they just don't know. They don't know how to differentiate between those two things. And I think for me, just looking at those women and seeing them very happy to be able to, go into the market and select what they know is good quality.
Making the right decisions.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was perfect. Yeah.
Any other quick last comments from anyone before I wrap up? Carlos.
Well, I want to share with you that in our case, our mission as a standardization body is to create a standard for the industry. And it's our goal in social responsibility. It means we take the social responsibility, creating standards. It's our major contribution to the society, to the industry. Not related with the IEC, we created recently a standard for compostable plastic in order to reduce the consumption of plastic in Mexico. And now the authorities are considering the standard for all the plastic industry, for the bags, for example, for the supermarkets. It is kind of things that give us some more additional interest in continue participating in the standardization activity, because we want to contribute to something.
Absolutely. James, last word before I conclude. Yes, James.
Well, thank you. I guess for me, my experience has been in smart cities is that it's a very complex ecosystem to provide standards to. And when you have a bunch of engineers in a room, they get completely immersed in the complexity of the systems. And I just think that it could be an opportunity here to map the work of those sorts of groups against the SDGs to provide some purpose. So if there's a way in which we can create a framework that can allow us to provide a strategy for our working groups to aim towards, SDGs could actually be a North Star for us to follow. So there's a real opportunity to bring that together.
Very true. In fact, there is something similar to this which is already going on. Last word, Solange.
Okay, thank you. I don't have a nice story, but maybe a call for IEC, and that's linked to COVID. With COVID, we learned that we are missing data. We are desperately asking for data. And I think there was a question from one of the participants of this session about how to assess the SDGs results. Also there, we don't have data to assess the effectiveness of the SDGs. And I think IEC is the right place to come up with ways to standardize data, to collect data, and to process data. So I think that's really is a call for IEC right now in the terms that we are needing, that the world is needing.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. You know, my homework still remains my homework. I'm not gone anywhere with it. So, but this has been such a wonderful conversation. It didn't even feel like that we were distant. So, and this is very heartening for me personally, because it made me feel connected to all of you. I want to give a message to our colleagues and friends on Facebook. Thank you so much for joining us. I'll make sure that all your questions are answered, and all the questions which came in from registered delegates also. We have those between Sylvia, Gabriela, and I will try and find the answer. And if we can't answer, we'll try and see what we can do, and we'll be honest about it. For now, thank you very much for all of you who are on Facebook Live. Thanks to all the panelists. Guys, raise your cup of coffee or glass or whatever you have. I want to raise a toast to all of you for being part of this little experience, experiment, but most of all, raise a glass to standards and SDGs. I think that's where the world comes together. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank
Cheers,
you.
everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. See
Thank
you.
you, Sylvia. Thank you, Gabriela. Cheers.